Hello, welcome. Welcome to Sexual Alchemy with Dea Carr. I'm here with Sarah Eaglewoman. This is such an honor for me. I have known Sarah for a number of years now in the community and have been honored to call her my own personal mentor in some ways, and she has helped me in so many ways as a modern urban shaman, a spiritual intuit. She has an incredible ability to help people connect with their soul grid, to align themselves in the most powerful way. So it's a session with Eaglewoman is truly a unique experience. It's in many ways hard to describe. She works as a blesser, as a healer, as an intuitive. She runs amazing circles, and really is, in my opinion, an incredible channel of the divine feminine. So thank you, Sarah Eaglewoman. It is such an honor to have you here on my couch and on my podcast. So thank you.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you. You know, I've been told that I bring the mountain to you. So, meaning that instead of you going up to the mountain, the urban shaman she brings the one, or he brings the mountain to you, so that you can experience the vision questing integrated into your life. Because most times when we do a vision quest, we go up for 4 days, and you're with me for 4 days, and you're fat. Of course, you're fasting, and you just have water. But when you come to see me here in this urban setting, you are fasting, and to a degree. But what I love is that we get to integrate all of the medicine from the mountain, from your vision quest, and then apply it into your everyday life. So the practice, because if you notice that some people go on vision quest or they go on retreats, and it feels so great to be up in the mountain, and I don't take anything away, because I think everyone should go to the mountains. But then it's important to come down the mountain and integrate what you've learned, what you've seen, into your everyday life and apply it. So that's why I love to be here for you and the masses that come forth, so that I can continue to guide you in this path of yours and not just leave the mountain, behind.
Thank you. That is a beautiful analogy for what it feels like, because it is hard to describe the space that you bring one into. So I've certainly experienced that myself. And that truth that, being out in the ethers is lovely and having that divine connection, but ultimately we must be able to bring that present into this dimension, into this reality, and apply it to our lives, not just be able to go out and wasn't that fun vacation, but now back to reality. How do we then integrate that and learn from it? And that is really a beautiful bridge that you provide.
Thank you. Yeah, it is important, because I know so many people love to be out there, to be ethereal, but then they have a hard time grounding it.
Right.
How do they come down off the mountain? Well, how do I ground it? I always say this: anchoring heaven on earth through you.
Right.
So it's earthing your body, earth my body, water my soul, air my breath, and fire my spirit.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And anchor that here on earth as you practice. And it's really about being in your awareness and applying the medicine ways in any spiritual practice. It's about how to integrate it.
Yes.
So that's what I love to do, and I love to teach this.
Yes.
And
you
give
are
this
a beautiful teacher of that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what's exciting to me about what you do is bringing the divine feminine in, and really helping, as you've often shared, that there's so much. A common theme that you see is the damage to the sacral chakra. The sexual energy is often something that becomes challenged in people, and that's a wound that you see often needs to be healed.
Yes. In my practice, there's so many that come that are wounded, wounded souls. And what I feel is important is to help guide them out from that place of that childhood history, that woundology,
Sure.
that is still happening within them.
Right.
So it's important to help them, to guide them, to transform that.
Right.
And what I find interesting is that when you're awakened, like the Kundalini awaken within you, and the second chakra, I love this, the second chakra as we describe it as the Sikkim, the energy that comes through you. And of course it's many different names, but the second chakra in spiritual practices, sometimes it gets stuck there. So you're experiencing all this energy, sexual energy, and you see it with men, you see it, of course, with women, as we are life givers, and we're experiencing it. But a spiritual practice, bringing the Kundalini, the Sikkim energy, to pull it up and let it rise into all the different chakras, of course, and rise up to the crown, to where you're constantly moving it through. Because if it gets stuck in the second chakra, then it's like a playground. It's like, I don't want to move from this second chakra, it feels too good. So it's like, okay, I've got to fulfill these needs, these urges. I've got to. And by wanting to fulfill these urges, sometimes the choices aren't always the best.
Sure.
And you're leading from these urges rather than leading from your heart chakra, leading from your intuition, your soul. And when you are experiencing the sexual, sensuous experience, it's important to experience it from the soul consciousness, rather than just keeping it in the second chakra of the physical. Like, okay, I've got to have these urges. And then when you have these urges and it's just contained in the second chakra, then it does something to the mental body. Because that's like, it takes over.
Right.
It takes over, and all of a sudden,
obsessive.
Yes, obsessive, addictive.
And if I may, what's interesting to me and why I'm doing this podcast and what the focus being sexual alchemy, right? Because it really is, how do we shift out of, because I hear what you're saying is, I feel like so much of us culturally, collectively, are stuck in just that, what you're describing, that there isn't that alignment with the divine in the sexual orientation, with our identification and relationship with our own sexual energy. And that's something that I feel like needs to be discussed more, needs to be even understood. I don't even know, in so many ways, there isn't even room for discussion about that, understanding of that. So I feel like you have this very unique ability to understand how sexual energy is an expression of divinity.
Absolutely. I love to think about Mary Magdalena and the story about Mary Magdalena and Yeshua, Jesus, the way their love, the love story. And I've read about the love story between the two of them, but also intuitively, just feeling her energy and her coming to me to share this soul union. Remembering union, this sacred union, and that comes from the intertwining of the souls to become one with creator, creation. And when you look at it from that perception, it's so beautiful. It's not having sex, but it's truly making love. You're making love. And you're anchoring this divine love through you. And the integration, it reminds me of the Kundalini rising, the serpent energy coming up and up. That represents life-giving. It's, giving of life. And that union, when two people come together, I always feel that it always should be the soul union together.
Yes.
And once there's the synergy of the souls making love, then it becomes passionate. It becomes so ethereal and so euphoric.
Yeah.
And there's ecstasy.
And then there is that anchoring of heaven on earth.
Exactly.
And
And
the
that's
act
what you're
in
doing.
and of itself is an
Exactly.
expression of that. And how thrilling is that, right? If we could teach our children that if you have this divine communion in your sexual energy, you have this ability to make it the most sacred of acts, right? And truly, and I think that's what we see. What I find is this weird kind of chasm that we either have this complete repression about sexual energy or this other extreme of this pornographication, right? Where we have now this, everybody at their fingertips has access to the most pornographic images you could, right? That is a new phenomenon that we are now in, right? And so how do we, in terms of being parents, in terms of navigating next generations of consciousness, help them bridge this gap between either totally shut down or I can do everything with everyone, and helping them understand that it is either as mundane as you want it to be or as sacredly, profound as you want it to be.
Well, of course, teenagers, they want to explore. First there's that exploratory level of, because they have these feelings that come through them, these urges. And then it's really about sharing that, to take away the dirtiness, because to make love with a sacred divine consciousness, it's that divine unity, the holy matrimony, when you explain, of course, to somebody like a teenager or somebody like a young adult, you have to first make them feel like it's not dirty.
Right.
Like sex, when you use the word sex, nowadays it's like, like you said, you look on TV or you look at these movies and it just feels like the message is, it's kind of, it's not clean. And so it's to bring it back to this cleanliness, this sacredness. And some people are shy about coming to the sacredness because they say, oh, how could sex be sacred? It's like, how do you do that? That feels like a dichotomy. It feels like, one extreme to the other. But it's, again, the integrating that to where a perception of what sacred union means. Right. The interpretation of what it really means to have this sensuous lovemaking. So lovemaking to me feels much more sacred than saying sex, having sex. Of course. It's just like a lower frequency, a low vibration. Having sex is so much less intimate than making love.
Right. It's the intention behind it. Right?
Absolutely.
This reminds me of one of the sayings that I love that you often express. It's forget what you know, remember what you forgot. In terms of the way that we're programmed sexually, so much of our Judeo-Christian teachings are this original sin idea, right? That we are born out of original sin, which I think intuitively as women, intuitively as women who channel the goddess energy and feel that connection with the divine, we know that that is not true. And that is a lie that has perpetuated and kept us in this state of fear and sadness around the sexual energy. Can you speak to that?
Such an entrapment, because I'm in total agreement that that is truly not. That is not the truth. That is just like, it's the big lie.
It is the big lie.
It's the great big lie, because that is so not true that we're made. That's through sin. That is, it's such the opposite. You're made through love. Through love. And there's a divine intervention of when you are intertwined with the one. And what I'm thinking of right now is that the question that I hear is that, well, what if you were sexually assaulted? What if you were let's say, raped or something, how could you say that you're made out of love, in a sense? You know, that takes me to a different topic of when I've heard this before. Someone would say, well, if I was sexually abused, then how could you say that a child is made out of love, or I'm made out of love if my mother was abused? But there's something, it's much higher than that. It's not just the physical, because of course that was a wrong act, and what was done upon a woman was definitely a wrong act. But then something happens once the child is born. It's like you can see that this child is not coming from, per se, the two, but from something much higher, from a divine intervention, from a divine source. And you see the purity of when a child is born out of that. And the innocence, it's bringing us back to this innocence, to this purity. So there is no sin. It's like, how can you look at an innocent being, and that from a mother that was sexually abused, and see that this child is such purity, such beauty and grace.
And that's their soul's journey, right?
Absolutely.
The agreement their soul made to come into this life.
Yes.
But to that point, you know, about sexual abuse and sexual assault that we're coming up against more and more in our society, it really is something that's in the forefront of our conversations, our consciousness. Obviously, the Weinstein case was just settled this week in favor of the victims, which is a big step, right? That's a big shift in what we're going to start to accept culturally as women.
Absolutely.
And what's happening now is an enormous shift, I think, out of that idea that women's bodies are the property of men, that they have a right to objectify, take what they want, and that truly the divine feminine, in my opinion, is rising up saying, this cannot happen anymore. That
Absolutely.
Men are hurting themselves when they violate women.
Yes, it's so true. And I think it's really coming back to where, you know, we're the ones. You know, we're the ones that we have been waiting for. This feminine consciousness has arrived. I have to share a story. I remember going into meditation, and Yeshua, Jesus, came to me and said to me, you know, everyone's expecting my return. You hear it in religion. You hear that, you know, the return of the Christ. The return. And he said to me, well, they're going to be very surprised because I'm sending my bride. Oh my goodness. And I said, oh my, what does this mean? What is it? I'm sending my feminine consciousness on the earth plane. And that would be what most would say the second coming. What a surprise to all those in the masculine, the patriotic realm, is to have this matriarch as leaders, the leaders. And you know, that's really how I believe it was written, because when you look back in history of the divine consciousness, I think about, and we're talking about the Master Yeshua, only because I, you know, communicate with Mary Magdalena and communicate with him. And what I know to be true is how the relationship with his mother was, with the grandmother, with, you know, just the feminine, the women that were around, and to uplift this divine being to his destiny. And I realized there was more women that were in his circle, and that's feminine consciousness, the teachings. And I really believe that this union between Mary Magdalena, and she wasn't what is written about, you know, that she wasn't a prostitute of that sort of anything. But, you know, it's like you said, it's like they want us to believe that that's how it was, when it was just not that at all. There's another great big lie.
Right.
Because she came in as she was his consul. He came to her for the divine teachings.
Yeah.
It was amazing to understand that he would go to her and she would prepare him for his destiny, and she would channel the divine inspiration, the divine wisdom, and feed him, because we are life givers.
Right.
So he knew this and respected this, and not to say, oh, I'm the way, I know the way. He was just bowing at her altar and saying, feed me, give me this wisdom.
Right.
And I feel that that is returning for us, for women, is that we must understand that we're feeding the wisdom, not just to our children, but more so to our companions, to our men, to teach the men
Truly.
the wisdom, the integration of this sexual union, which is sacred,
Yes.
is to teach them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I feel is important right now, is that's our mission, that's our assignment, is the feminine is here to teach the men about this sacred union.
I feel that so strongly, and what's imperative to that is that the women start to understand that, right? That more and more
Absolutely.
women start to wake up to how our divine alignment is truly there, that we are the conduits that literally through our crown chakra draw life into our wombs and bring it out forth into the earth. That
Right.
when we honor that as the most creative, powerful force,
Absolutely.
that the patriarchal model of hierarchical status, right? I dominate over you, must shift to this egalitarian state, which I believe is what you're describing in the relationship of Yeshua and Magdalene, that
Yes.
they were partners in
Absolutely.
channeling the Ida and the Pingala in that, right? In that
Absolutely.
raising of the Kundalini
Yes.
energy, which helped him activate his powerful energy, right?
Yes, and it was an activation and it was a transmission. She transmitted this light. I call it the light of understanding. She transmitted this light, and through that light was such wisdom and knowledge of the divine consciousness.
Yeah.
And so that's their union. That was their sacredness. And it was beautiful just to understand it in that way, how important she was to him and his mother and, his grandmother, and how they really nurtured that.
Right.
And a lot of people don't understand that, when you read about it, they think that the masculine in him is the powerful side. It's not. It's the feminine.
Yeah.
And not just with him, but other divine masters that have come in to teach us. So it's important that we as women now to realize that we are the ones that we have been waiting for,
Yeah.
and we birth men, we birth women.
Sure.
So it's that birthing of life that is so important to realize that's what we do.
Right.
And I feel like the way that we were programmed
Just
as
to get to
women,
that,
as children, as female children, is that the programming, that, oh, you look up to your father, the father figure in the home, or, he's the one that, that you look up to. And those that didn't have fathers, it was mostly, okay, the mother was the father and the mother, but it was still that dominating experience, because I believe that the masculine was, the programming was that they had to instill fear in us in order to control the masses.
For sure.
So that's the domination.
It's funny that you said it, because I was just going to talk about programming and what we have to undo to start as women recognizing what true power that we have and the beauty of that, and the possibility and potential for bringing that heaven into earth.
Yes.
But there's so much conditioning that we're now seeing with the Me Too movement, with things that are coming out in different communities, that women. When I worked for many years, I mean, honestly, I can say I don't think I had a job where I wasn't sexually harassed in one way or another. And I really accepted it as, Well, you know, I mean, to some degree, you're told it's a compliment, right? That you're getting attention for your looks, or you're getting attention for whatever. We're often taught to laugh it off, right? To you know, so that we're not put in a direct confrontation with a man, because we know that that can be very threatening and potentially physically dangerous. How many different ways that we conditioned ourselves to accept levels of oppression and objectification and physical assault. There were so many ways that women, we talk about this idea of collective Stockholm syndrome, right? That
Yes.
often women who are abused, who don't heal that abuse, don't come forward about it, don't actually work through the process of healing it, have that state of Stockholm syndrome, which is that, if people don't know what that means, it's the identification with your oppressor, the identification that ultimately you align with, because it is way too challenging to fight against it. Can you speak to that a little bit, about what you've seen in terms of women doing that?
Well, you know, it brings me to this memory about how the suppressed energy, the suppressed feminine. I was just thinking too that there are women that are also very masculine.
Sure.
Because they go from, if they were abused, then they have this defense mechanism within them, to where it makes them very masculine and very much in the ego. You know,
because they've been taught that that's what power is.
Exactly.
Right? That's the model that we're given.
That's right.
So be like this, right? Yeah.
And so it's, when they go from one extreme to the other, it's coming back to a balance of honoring both your feminine and your masculine. And again, that sacred union within ourselves. First, before we can have a sacred union with another physical or a spirit, or a union with another soul, we must first have that sacred union within ourselves. And, you know, there's so much about forgiveness, forgiving your predator, forgiving those that abused you. And there's a lot of movements that are out there. And when I listen to these movements, especially on social media, the women gather and they talk continuously about how they were sexually abused and how they were wounded. And when I hear it, I hear the vibration of it, and I hear that they're going back to this place of becoming stagnant again. And it's a heavy energy. It's like so heavy, and it needs to be transformed and cleared. It's like some people want to keep talking, having that conversation, to where it becomes so, it's like boring already. It's like, okay, we heard your story, we've heard you, and we respect and we feel for you, yes, but now what do we do about it?
And what I hear you saying is that kind of obviously it's very important to acknowledge the wound, to say that it's there, because that's been a problem for years. I mean, honestly, like pre-Oprah, I always want to say that, like, nobody talked about sexual abuse. It was very much something that, like, well, it wasn't really something in the forefront of our consciousness. And then once those conversations started happening, we started realizing, wow, look at the percentage of how many people were sexually molested as children. How many, I mean, you know, people talk about the false victim, right? Someone who comes forward with a lie. I mean, statistically, it really is only 2% of people who actually share a story that is a lie, that is a false accusation of a rape or a sexual assault. But the bigger picture is moving out of that victim mode. That's what I hear you saying. Is that how do we then not totally identify ourselves as, I'm a sexual abuse victim? How do we then shift the narrative in, so now what? Now what? And so much of that, as I found, is helping others. I know that I help myself when I help other people.
True. In the ways that I work with my medicine of the eagle, the eagle medicine is about seeing it from a higher perception, seeing it through Creator's eyes, and healing it through a higher creative consciousness within ourselves. So I say this, that if two people, if we're having a conversation, and you're about to tell me about your story, and I'm going to be the eagle in this union, because I'm going to listen, And while I'm listening, I'm not going to try to think of what I'm going to say next to you,
Right.
or I'm going to listen with my heart. I'm really going to listen and listen to your vibration. And you could tell me your story of what happened to you and all of that. But it's something so sacred and divine when there are two people together and somebody is the eagle. That means that healing is taking place,
Right.
that there's a vibration coming through by being of the eagle and allowing that person a sacred space to share their story, no matter how painful and how many times they repeat it. It's like, not in the eagle medicine ways is don't relate. Even if you've experienced that yourself,
Yeah.
the eagle has experienced right in that moment.
Right.
It's not about what you experience. It's about, how can I help this one? How can I help her heal?
Right.
Well, you heal by being a great listener. And while you're listening, there's the energy between us. It's that sacred energy that's moving up, that's moving, going into that infinite white circle of light that takes it up.
Right.
And there's healing that is taking place between the two of us in such a super conscious, subconscious level. And I feel that that's important to do, because if you ever you get together with, whether it be two women talking or three, and then all of a sudden they say, oh my goodness, that happened to me too. Oh, and that happened to me too. Oh my God, that happened to you. And I'm watching the energy, and I can see how everyone is going down. They're anchoring. There's a suppress, and all of a sudden it becomes dark and icky and sticky. And there's no one in the group that's an eagle that is to help them swoop that energy up again. Elevate that,
Right.
shift it
Right.
in the way that I'm holding a sacred vision for you. I honor and respect, and I feel, and I have such compassion for what you've gone through. I do. Now,
Right.
let me lift you back up to your higher power,
Yeah.
your higher exalted self. That's the liberation.
Yeah.
That's the freedom and liberation and the healing, the transformation that will take place. So the story is not repeated and repeated,
Right.
because some people like to get a lot of mileage out of
Sure.
that,
Yeah.
because then they're so used to being the victim. It's like, oh, if I tell my story,
Yeah.
she's going to really feel sad for me, and she's going to hurt for me, and I've got their attention.
And that's what I mean about the identification of the personality gets so locked into, this is who I am, and I can gain sympathy for this, and I
Right.
can gain attention.
Right.
And it's a tricky thing, because it's hard
Right.
to monitor for yourself. And you really helped me with just that perspective, that as a healer, as a teacher, to be able to go out and up into that eagle space, into that higher realm,
Right.
rather than what I think sometimes we tend to do as women is over-identify and empathize, right?
Right.
Oh, I know.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
the point that you've made so eloquently is, then nobody's holding the higher space.
Right.
And that's tricky, right? Because then
Yeah.
you all get drudged down into the old pain and the old story.
That's it.
And so it's such a beautiful analogy, that eagle medicine, that
Yes.
holding that, not superior or not like that you don't have compassion, but really giving the person permission to come up here. Come up
Yes.
here. Let's go up here together, right?
Yes.
To get out of the darkness.
Right, and in this shamanic way, I always visualize that you become an eagle, and that the eagle comes down and pulls you out of the trenches and pulls you up, up, up. And then while you're in flight, the eagle shows you who you are. Not what's been done to you, but who you truly are.
Yeah.
And when you get that true identity of your truth, of who you are, then all of that suppressed, that wounds, all the negativity, it just drops away. So I like to visualize that, while you're up there with the eagle,
That's
that everything
beautiful.
starts to move down, and it transforms, and it's released from you, and you really can come to this new place of, yeah, this is who I am. I'm not what was done to me, but this is who I truly am.
Yeah. And that's what I've experienced in sessions with you. I've seen you do with groups of people that you have tuned in so truly miraculously into the energy and are able to give from that perspective each person exactly what they need. And it is a
Thank you.
true gift, and I'm grateful that I get to experience it and get to learn from you.
Thank you. I'm honored and privileged to carry this medicine and to be able to help so many on their path.
Yeah.
So I'm honored.
Yeah, it's a very important thing that you're doing.
Thank you.
In terms of the spiritual community, we were talking earlier about how often people who are spiritual or who can go out into those spaces are often coming from particularly sexual wounds, particularly victims of sexual abuse of some kind, and how, especially if it happens as a child, that they have this ability to kind of go out and they can relate up into those upper realms by escaping, to some degree. And so you've so often seen that in the community in terms of
I've seen it like to meditate. Someone just the other day told me that they were in meditation for 2 hours, and I thought, that's interesting, a 2-hour meditation. And then after she removed herself from the meditation, she went out into the world, and it was hard for her to function because she was so submerged in that feeling of being outside of her body.
Right.
And I know this person she has been sexually abused. So that is what happens. It's like this feeling of taking myself out.
Right.
You're exactly what you said. Is like, it's a familiarity.
Right.
It's familiar. That's what I can do. And so many have done that.
Yes.
And it's about anchoring. Once you've experienced, now it's about anchoring this energy, as I say, anchoring heaven on earth through you, and to ground it, and to really ground it strongly within you, and know that you're constantly moving that energy, shifting it to where it's not, you're not what happened to you. You're not of your past. That has shifted. That has changed, and you don't have to take it with you. It's actually giving you permission, giving yourself permission that I no longer want to live in that place where I was abused. I want to be free from that. Right. So, it's just about being present to what's around you, and, just truly being present. Like in here, the conversation is just being truly present, and something truly miraculous happens. Like I say, there's a shift in consciousness when you can be truly present to what's happening right here in the now.
Right. Because in some ways that is a gift in a very bad experience, that you have this access now to the outer higher realms. But the importance is being able to anchor it, obviously, and to not spiritually bypass, right? To not be that avoidant, like, oh, now I'm out, I'm going to go, I'm going to escape.
Yeah.
To be able to be healed enough that you can integrate that experience on this realm.
Yes, it's really about having the confidence within yourself and knowing that you have the ability to anchor that ethereal, that you can anchor it within your physical being and connect up to the reality around you, to connect up and just to be present to what. I always like to, when I see somebody like that, or when they're going through something like this, I always say, go outside in nature.
Yes.
Just stand in front of a tree. Just stand. And that could be your meditation. Is just look at the tree. Look at how it moves gently. And then all of a sudden you become one with that tree. And you're so anchored and rooted onto this Mother Earth. And it's application again. It's just like being in the becoming of it. Yeah. Being in the becoming of this nature around us, And so I feel that is a great tool, is to help someone to be present and not, and again, like I say, forget what you know. Remember what you forgot. Remember the sacred union, that you're supposed to be here in this physical form. Your soul, you have this vehicle to be in this physical form. Don't keep sending your soul out, because it may be painful, or it's a bad memory that you had that was done to you. The practice is, how can I continue to anchor my soul in my present form, in my physical form, in my present reality? That's the mission. That's, our assignment here.
Earth School.
Yes, it's the Earth School.
Yeah.
It's like what we do on this earth plane in our earth body. That's important.
Yeah.
And there's the evolution. There's how we evolve.
And what I'm so grateful and honor truly in you is that you are that Earth Mother energy. You are that representative with the channel to the divinity, and it is so necessary at this time. And I'm so grateful for what you are able to do and how the space that you hold for others, to invite them into that space with you. It's so deeply important right now.
Thank you. I feel it's important for a lot of spiritual leaders, spiritual teachers, in different spiritual communities, is to be a responsible healer, teacher. You know what really gets my feathers ruffled?
Yes,
is when I hear a spiritual teacher or leader say that I'm just the conduit, I'm just the messenger. And it separates the teaching and the message, because I look at that person and I say, well, aren't we supposed to follow your lead, your example? And I remember one spiritual teacher who said, don't follow me, follow the teachings. And I said, how irresponsible is that?
Right.
Because you're saying there's a separation. There's a separation of, okay, you follow the teachings, but it's like a pass.
Right.
That I can do whatever I feel like doing. I can do anything I want and be disrespectful, disgraceful, but you keep practicing these teachings that I'm giving you.
Right.
That's what? It's like split tongue.
Sure.
You're speaking with a split tongue. Be the teachings.
Yeah.
And what the practice that my husband and I have is that, you can say, follow me, I am the teachings, which means I am in my practice, and I'm not perfect,
Right.
and I'm not walking a tightrope, but what I am doing is I'm applying what I teach. Practice what you preach, that saying.
Right.
Well, it's really, there's something to be said about that,
Right.
because you must integrate the practices that you're learning from, or there's so many teachers that are going through teachers training, and I scan the room and I think, okay, they're gonna, and free from judgment, I'm not judging or criticizing, but I'm saying, can they really carry that volume of responsibility?
Right.
And that's the degree. That should be like the invocation. Can you carry this degree of responsibility as being a teacher to guide someone else in their own life, in their own relationship?
Right.
Can I look to you? It's that saying, if you ever want to know anything about the teacher, look at the student.
Right.
Study the student if you want to know anything about the teacher. And there's truth to that.
And holding the space with integrity, right? And that
Absolutely.
understanding that none of us are perfect. We're here
That's
in
right.
these human forms. We're bound to make mistakes. But ultimately holding that eagle standard, that higher
Yes.
vision.
And as long as the student can see that the teacher is in their practice, if you're doing what you're teaching us to do.
Certainly.
And of course, we're not perfect as leaders, as spiritual healers, but we're practicing to be in the becoming of it.
I love that.
Perfection.
Be in the becoming.
Yeah, being in the
'Cause
becoming.
it's the journey.
Yes.
Right? It's the journey.
Absolutely.
So, Sarah Eaglewoman, how could people find you, reach out to you, get a session with you, hear more about you?
Call my right hand person, Nancy.
Nancy.
You can actually go to my website,
Okay.
SarahEaglewoman.com, and
Excellent.
there's the information there.
Oh, wonderful. So, and
Yes.
people can book an appointment through
Yes.
Nancy on that site.
Yes.
Wonderful. I'm so deeply honored to share this divine feminine space with you, with your divine
you.
feminine being. It's such an honor, and you've helped me so much, and I know that you've helped so many and will continue to do so. I love you dearly, and thank you.
thank you so much for inviting me to share this wisdom with you, and I'm honored and privileged to do so. And blessings, many blessings bestowed upon
Yeah, to be continued. Hopefully we'll have more of
Yes.
these together.
you. This is fun.